Afternoon all, let's have a look at another Capablanca game. I want to maybe get a variety of examples of his different styles of play, but this was another kingside attacking game where the opponent didn't give himself much counterplay on the queen side. So what happens when you give Capablanca a free hand on the king side is well demonstrated by this game played in New York 1915. Remember, a lot of Capablanca tournaments were held in New York when he went to study at university. And he made friends with Marshall, who gave him that gateway into key tournaments. And it'll be interesting also to have a look at some games against Marshall as well later after this one. So this was against Abraham Kupchik, New York 1915. So Camper kicked off with e4. After e5, knight f3, knight c6, we have the classic Ruy Lopez. a6, bishop a4. Very trodden territory. Knight f6, so far very standard stuff. Rook e1, b5. Millions of games have been treading on this path. So now we have c3. Again, all modern by modern time theory. Knight a5, bishop c2, c5. Again, all standard stuff. Black is preparing, if d4, to get at least some c-file counterplay potentially. Sometimes c2 becomes vulnerable in particular. d4, and now queen c7. This is okay here, because if white's a bit premature to play d5, he's got to factor in, maybe c4, the c5 square maybe. The knight can reroute to c5. d5 is not so hot here. Knight c6, again the temptation to play d5, but Capablanca resists it here, and he blocks the rook in from e4, but the pawn's protecting e4. Okay, after castles, knight bd2. At some point here, maybe black could have considered c takes d, because I don't think it would have been any worse than the game continuation. Rook d8. Okay. So the question is really, does white ever want to play d5? Because d5, comes at some cost of, sometimes dark squares, weakening dark squares, as we see with a very poor move. Logically, c5 and e5 are going to be potentially exploitable. Particularly c5, though, I would expect, in this kind of situation. So rook c1, bishop d7. And now, here comes d5 very shortly now, knight f1. So the controversy, the tension is resolved now, because black's played b4. Now b4 may be a strategic error here, because from the game evidence, black really didn't have any counterplay of significance now on the queen side in terms of exploitable targets. It's here Kappa chose to close the position with d5. Okay, so what's going on here? Why can't black, compensate for dark squares? Well, the thing is, the c5 square is never made available to black for a start now. After knight a7, c4 is covered up, reinforcing d5. So these two squares are not really at black's disposal. So there's no real issue, it seems, with d5 here. It just seems now white can actually play on the king side without worrying too much about queenside play. In the earlier game, we saw that Capablanca was taking big risks, losing 2 pawns on the queen side. There was a technical defense available. This game is more kind of one directional. So g4 seems outrageous, but with the centre closed, there's no counter attack either in the centre or on the queen side really. What exploitable targets are there on the queen side? Okay, there's a nuisance move, knight b6, but easily parried with b3. And now, what is this? Is this going to be the exploitable part of white's pawn chain, b3? It's not really of great significance. Kappa now gets in quite a few moves on the king side for a build-up, for a kingside attack. So knight g3, and now king h2, leisurely making way for the rook to come to either g1 or h1 even. So a4, rook, g1 no, of course, g-file. Potentials, potential for knight f5, as I was about to say. So a takes, bishop f8. Is black's defense going to be adequate here? Well, the key defender on the light squares is this bishop. So Kappa's next move looks designed to exchange off the bishop. normal, crude, kind of effective stuff, simple and strong. Rook A2. Okay, that entrance was allowed. Bishop G5, Bishop G7, and now the bishop is unpinned now with this move Queen E3, which means also, you know, the bishop's now again protecting E4, which means the knight is free to move as well. But E4 is heavily guarded by these guys, so White can still carry on with his attack now. After Rook D8, is Black's A file worth anything? I wouldn't have thought so, because there's no real clear exploitable targets. Bishop B1, a slight eviction as well, just to eye the B3 square. Okay, there might be a knight takes C4 tactic if this rook ever moves, but apart from that, there aren't too many worries now on the queen side. Knight E1. Okay, Knight E1 prepares even to evict the rook even from that square to break this pin, because Knight C2 can be played next. But first Queen D3 after this mysterious king move. Well, it gave way for Black's next move now, which seems awfully passive actually. Knight G8, but it does defend against Bishop H6s for the moment. First another rook eviction, so Knight C2. So again, maybe this is prophylaxis from Kappa. All of Black's queen side, the A file, you know, these rooks sitting on the A file, they don't seem to mean anything here. Without exploitable targets, the meaning seems to be completely lost of this activity. It seems a token activity with even 0 entry points guarded by these two guys. So no entry points at all. This is the way to play an attack, and now he can switch his attention to the king side. So Rook C F1, as though maybe even F4 might be played. Bishop E8, but no, careful logical preparation first. Bishop E3, Knight D7, okay, Knight E1, rerouting the knight somewhere. Is it giving back Rook A3 to Black though? Black doesn't use that, he plays Queen D8. And now we see G5. Okay, bit of squashing on these two squares, which means peeling is facilitated. If White ever plays for HG now, this is going to be more effective. So Queen A5, putting even more pressure on that seemingly token A file. So Black's a bit of spectator in this game. It's less lively than the sort of you know, counter-attack games of modern, say, you know, 2500s playing each other. It's like one side's observing. But you know, Abraham Kupchik, he's got a great reputation at New York Manhattan Chess Club. You know, he's been club champion there for several years. Checking out his wiki page, he's no shouldn't be that easy to beat without counterplay. It's just that the counterplay on the queen side has been squashed so far. So Queen D8, and now we see this H file peeling. So H5, and now Knight F3. Okay, supporting G5. Knight B6. Okay, now we can start to create a battery on the H file. So Rook H1, shuffle the king as well to G2. Now HG, and now the battery is created, intensifying the pressure logically with the doubling of rooks on H7. Note also there's a battery here on the diagonal, so two coordinated batteries are coming up, and the gateway to that will be a spectacular knight move very soon. So the rook battery on the H file, and now behold, if I give you 10 seconds, I wonder if you can spot it, or maybe 20, or stop the video. Try and spot Kappa's next move. So clue, there's two batteries here you want to coordinate on that delicate H7 square. What is the key move here for the attack? Okay, 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, Knight F5, this is the time to sack. Because look at this, if G takes, E takes, then F6 will be crushing, surely, with all this pressure on H7 being exerted. His opponent didn't play that, played instead Rook F8, but this carries with it a positional evil to do with weakening black's king position. Losing that dark squared bishop is proving fatal now in variations. I'm not sure if the opponent either resigned or lost on time or something, because this next move was questioned by some people looking at this game, asking why black resigned now after queen e2. And it's here we need quite a bit of explanation maybe. Why would black resign after queen e2? There doesn't seem to be a forced mate or anything. Okay, let's assume he didn't run out of time. I'm not sure they even were using a chess clock. Maybe it was a leisurely 3-week tournament or something. But we'll put a Kibitzer on now and analyse this final position. One idea is, if given time, white will play knight h2 to g4 to f6. Another idea is knight h2 to g4 to h6, and then with the idea of f4 and opening up this diagonal. Yet another idea is bishop takes c5, followed by knight takes c5 and queen b2, again exploiting the diagonal. So let's have a look at concrete variations to support this. So it's all about the dark squares around the opponent's king here, removing that dark squared bishop. Okay, let's run through a variation to show an example disaster. So say check. Now here, you see, I found it fascinating checking with an engine that queen d7 spectacularly fails, and in fact queen c8 seems to be the only move here. Queen d7, and we see the elements at work here, backfiring on the black king after bishop takes c5, and now say d takes, knight takes, say the queen moved, there will be queen b2 with devastating effect on the diagonal. How would black defend this? It's very, very hard. So say a token moves which rook gives, check, and we're going to see the devastation now. Or just picking up the rook here, knight takes a7 is strong. Or if we wanted to carry on the attack, queen d2 is an alternative. So check, say, check. You see the dark squares are vulnerable in these lines. Rook e1. I mean, this bishop, this rook, they're not looking pretty, but we want hard evidence that this is a disaster. That's why I'm playing it on a bit. So here, move like f3 to stop any queen g4s. So the exchange up anyway is plus 17 now. So if black's forced to play h6, he's crumbling actually. He's literally crumbling out of the pressure. There was a token queen sack even. So you can see the pressure mounting up on the dark squares in that variation. But let's have a look at a knight, a more accurate continuation. Say the black queen went to c8, it would force a knight maneuver. Otherwise this bishop c5 and knight e5 is devastating on the dark squares. So let's force this more positional knight maneuver. Knight h2. Okay, let's protect the pawn for a moment indirectly. Now say black does try and defend f6. Okay, so I'm following some Rybka analysis. Let's follow knight g4. It's more aesthetic with this knight h6 plan. We can even just double on the h file. Knight h6. See, the key idea coming up is this f4, I believe. So bishop e3 making way for queen b2s. And now it's here, there'll be the crushing f4. This is the right time now that the queen's got access to b2. That f4 is very, very effective now. So this is a +2 advantage. So Rybka's giving up the rook. So let's say let's not give up the rook. See what the devastation is. Knight takes. Rook takes. F takes. Queen f3. Because there'll be a mate with the two rooks now. So the f file is actually good for cutting off the black king here. So this would be a pretty continuation. So f4's have got all sorts of implications. It's not just that diagonal. It's also other things. But say it was just routinely taken, you know, obviously then the diagonal is immediately leading to a mate, queen b2, and mate. So that's how dangerous f4 is as well. So it's all starting all these tactical ripples are started when after knight takes g7 is played. So that's why it seems a bit mysterious, though. Still, queen e2 and then resigns. You know, Abraham didn't want it demonstrated fully why his position's lost, but it would have been interesting, yeah, to get Capablanca to play a few more moves here. But let's have a look at this game in overview and summary. It was a game where there was a very well-timed d5, which can be controversial sometimes if black can get the c5 square, for example. But here it seems, you know, black overstepped incorrectly. Maybe he could have played cd at some point, theoretically. But b4, this closing up of the centre, it's not to do with black wasting time with the pieces being jumbled like this. It's black hasn't got the queenside counterplay, which really maybe he should have. I guess maybe Nxg7 would have considered the king evacuation here, like rook b8, start running with the king to b7. It would have been safer over there. But the king stayed where it was. There's a fixed target on the king's side. So it was a bit of a spectator game, actually. I feel a bit unfair choosing this game because black's counterplay was virtually non-existent, and white proceeded to get two huge batteries against the black king, so the diagonal battery, but now the h pawn and the doubling of rook's battery, coordinating aesthetically with this next move, this knight f5, bringing together all the forces on h7. If only the black king had evacuated earlier, it could have been over here. Oh well. It was a fixed target, and now after queen e2, black felt compelled to resign. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.